So my name is Rachele Gianfranchi. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Everbridge. Everbridge is one of the private companies that participated to the Engage project. We derived immense benefit from being introduced in a community of academics and practitioners. And we even liked the catalog of solutions. So we would like today to describe and to provide a real-life demo of the prototype of innovation that this project helped us to design. It all started with changing the slide. No, the green button. Okay, yes. So I will cover the agenda, and then I will pass the word to Nathan Stolero, who is a researcher at the Technical University of Tel Aviv. And then we will share between the team with the respective competences the different aspects of what will be a real-life demonstration of how artificial intelligence, notably a chatbot, can support emergency management in terms of societal resilience, access to information by citizens that wouldn't otherwise have it, through our public warning system. So, Nathan, please.
So hello everybody, I'm Nathan Stoller from Tel Aviv University. For those of you who I did not recognize your face. So I will tell you a little bit about what we did in developing the blueprint of the chatbot initially before the prototype was initiated. It was a joint academic, industrial, technological work that we did together. And at the beginning, we had three initial goals that we wanted to work with, the reasons that we thought that creating a blueprint for an AI-enabled chatbot for dealing with emergencies and disasters regarding information will be a good idea. The first goal was that we need to provide information, and we don't need to provide this information only when we are awake, only when we are not in emergencies and the call centers are free to answer every call. We need to be able to give this information 24/7, because if I need a piece of information during the night, and this information could be crucial for me, I need to be able to receive this information. In cases that there are emergencies, there are massive workloads on the call centers and they cannot get every call. We need to distinguish between calls which are very important, they need to receive a human response, they might relate it to a direct emergency that need a human response, and people that even for themselves, they're not looking for something which is a true emergency, but they just want to receive information regarding something, regarding evacuation routes, regarding shelters, regarding food supply, regarding preparedness, and they just have a simple question that they don't find the information. And the third goal that we had in mind is that there is a lot of information out there that we cannot tell whether it's true or not, where it's misinformation, whether it's disinformation that is spread on purpose. And we need also to be able to provide some guidance or some validation for this false information. But we also learned that we don't just need to define our goals, we will need to define what we don't want to do. At the beginning, today we talked a lot about AI, we discussed it a lot at the beginning. When we started this project, we had a lot of devil advocates regarding the use of AI, regarding the use of chatbots in the case of emergency. I'm not mentioning names. We had devil advocates that really help us to improve the program. My hand is just scratching a little bit. But these devil advocates actually very helped to show us in our face, we are very technological savvy, to show us in our face the limitations of these ideas. So we didn't want any chatbot to replace human being. We didn't want any chatbot to provide information that should be provided by a human being. We didn't want the chatbot to tell me what to do when I'm under the wrecks of the building after an earthquake. This is not something that we want the chatbot to do. We just need the chatbot to facilitate the work, the real emergencies that needs human intervention. So the first stage, still in the part of the academia, we did an initial plan. We reviewed all the initial solutions, all the chatbots that are used for emergency and for areas that are close to emergencies. And we created this massive blueprint that takes into consideration all the components, all the parts that a chatbot that is dealing with emergencies should take into consideration, from the channels that it will be spread on, from the user experience of the chatbot, from question of security of privacy, such as those which were risen in the discussion of the catalog of solutions, the security of information, the potential leakage of information, the use of machine learning algorithms and other things that can affect the analysis of the answers, of the communication process. And then based on this model, we started two things. The first, that in a minute, the team of Everbridge will talk about, was the creation of a prototype that takes the idea of AI-enabled chatbots into the specific field of public warnings. And the second stage was to validate what we were doing. So in order to validate it, because when we finished creating this massive blueprint, OpenAI initiated ChatGPT, and then things started to change. Not significantly, by the way, but things started to change. So one thing we did, we used the Delphi technique to consult with experts. And we had a couple of rounds of experts commenting on the blueprint, saying what they think fits the blueprint, what we should take out, what we should improve. And after 2 or 3 rounds of consulting with the experts, we improved the blueprint. And we created something which is a little bit similar to the original blueprint, but takes into consideration some elements that were already developed. For example, instead of building our own technology in order to analyze the data, we can already use the models, the language models, the other AI models, which are already in the market, such as OpenAI's ChatGPT or Google Bard or any other language models. We can use what we call meta prompts to limit the scope of the chatbot. We don't want the chatbot to answer questions about how to bake a cake, because if you ask ChatGPT how to bake a cake, it will answer you. But we don't want our bot to do it. So we can use, for example, the technology of ChatGPT, but we can limit it. Answer only questions about emergencies. Answers only questions about what's already in our database. Don't go to other sources. So this is what we did in the part of the research. And with these findings, Everbridge developed a prototype that takes this blueprint into consideration and shows how it's used in public warning systems. And this Jumana will tell you, and also about how the chatbot helped to save a cat in Trondheim.
Maybe not that part, but... Hello, everyone. My name is Jumana. I am a third-year software engineering student in the Netherlands at Saxion University, but I'm currently doing my internship at One to Many Everbridge. So I'll be talking about the chatbot, the public warning chatbot. So this is essentially what happens during an emergency. We have vital lines of communication, which include news channels, authority systems, and even police lines face heavy traffic from citizens during an emergency, trying to ask information about the emergency or what they should do. So this could potentially lead to those systems being disrupted, overwhelmed, or even blocked. So this is where the public warning chatbot comes in. where citizens can now ask questions to the chatbot instead, reducing the load on those traditional communication channels by diverting the inquiries to go to the chatbot instead. And this also ensures that accurate and efficient information is accessible to everyone. Okay, so what goals do we have for the chatbot? Firstly, we want to quickly and efficiently deliver extensive information complementary to the initial public warning message, which I will get into later. Secondly, we want to ensure that critical information is accessible to everyone. So since we are based in the Netherlands, we have the chatbot available in both Dutch and English. Thirdly, which I already touched upon, which is reducing the traffic on the traditional communication channels by diverting the questions to go to the chatbot instead. Oh, okay, so this is a bit of a background diagram as to how everything works. So we first publish an alert through the public warning platform. So we send a public warning message to all the citizens, so to all the users, that contains a link to the chatbot. And at the same time, we send a CAP file, which is an alert file, to our chatbot server. So as a user, once you get the emergency notification, there would be a link to the chatbot. Once you click on it, it would direct you to the chatbot, where you can interact with it and ask it questions about the emergency. And all of the questions and responses are handled with artificial intelligence. In our case, it's currently Dialogflow and OpenAI ChatGPT. Okay, so this is more of a visual representation of what I just said. So at the very left, we have the emergency alert with a link to the chatbot. Once you click on that link, it would direct you to the landing page of the chatbot, which it has a description of the alert, when it would start, when it would end, how severe it is, etc. And the red button over there, if you click on it to ask a question, it would direct you to the chat page where you can ask all of your emergency-related questions. Okay, moving on into artificial intelligence. So we had an earlier version of the chatbot in which we demonstrated in Romania, and that version only dependent on Dialogflow, which is an AI engine, a product from Google. And how it works is that it works with intent and training phrases. However, currently, we have a second version in which we use a combination of two AI engines, namely Google Dialogflow and OpenAI ChatGPT, which works based off of prompts. And how this works is that when you first ask your question to the chatbot, your question gets sent to Dialogflow. And if Dialogflow does not understand your question, or in better words, we did not train it to understand your question, instead of getting a response like, sorry, I couldn't understand your question, or can you say that again? Your question will be directed to ChatGPT instead, and then the response would be displayed to you in the front end. However, regarding potential future research, we were thinking we would integrate an AI driver, which acts as an abstraction layer, in the sense that we can switch out between different AI models or even a combination of AI engines, and everything would still work properly. Okay, so moving on into the expanded features. So the version on the left is the old version that we had back when we demonstrated in Romania. And what we did is that we had a demonstration session with a survey at the end. And most of the feedback that we got from participants was mostly about how we handle instructions, which was a bit chaotic, as you can see. So basically, if you were to ask questions about the emergency or what you should do or what instructions you should follow, it would always give you the exact same response, which is what you see. So it has information about the latest information in your area, what you should do now, or what instructions you should follow if you're a business. And quite obviously, this may not be relevant to most people. So what we did to improve that feature is that we introduced a database that can now answer hazard-specific questions. So if you ask how you can prepare, or what you should do now, or what to do once the emergency is over, you would get different responses. And as you can see on the right, the responses are way more concise and straightforward. Not only that, but we now also have multimedia. So we now also support images and infographics. So on the left, we have infographics about how you can prepare for the emergency, or on the second one, it's basically who you should call based on the severity of the damage you incurred. And even images like the one on the right from the Red Cross, so basically an image displaying what you should have in your emergency kit. Not only that, but we also now support videos. So we have two different types of videos. So we have instructional videos like the ones on the right, which would basically explain what you should do during a flood or a storm, or even information-based videos like the one on the left, which kind of explains the emergency itself or what possibly causes a landslide or a flood, etc. Okay, so the latest feature we've been working on is location-based information. So you could ask the chatbot how far you are from the emergency location, and it would first ask permission if you would like to allow us to access your location or your device's location. If you accept, then we direct you to a different screen where we display your location with the red marker. And at the bottom of the screen, we display exactly how far away you are from the emergency area in kilometers. However, if you happen to be within the boundaries of the emergency area, then we obviously don't display a distance, but instead we alert you that you are at the emergency location. Okay, so a little bit about our demonstration that happened in Norway. Nothing about cats, sorry. But what happened is that we had the demonstration booth where participants got the chance to interact with the chatbot, and then at the end we had a survey, which we were very happy with the results. We had 33 survey responses and around 200 data entries or questions asked to the chatbot. And this was one of the most important questions that we had, which is, what information do you think a chatbot should provide in an active emergency? And there were a lot more responses, but those were the most important. So we have a spike for location, instructions, distance to emergency area, and multiple languages. And out of those top 4, we've successfully worked on 3 out of 4. So we are quite happy about that. And now we move on to the demonstration with Menno.
Thank you, Jomana. My name is Menno Bot, and I work as a solution architect in one-to-many Everbridge, and I will go through the demo. Even from the early days when we joined Engage, we wanted to make the chatbot an end-to-end system, so not just a prototype that I could show, but I also wanted to integrate it with the real public warning system, or and also the real cell broadcast system, or an active 4G network, so that I can make demos and prove these, so that we can prove these things. So we were able to do that in the start, but we were not able to demo it to you because the demo system that we have in our lab is just way too big for me to take with me, and demonstrations don't work very well if you do it remotely. So a couple of months ago, I got from the sales team a portable 4G network. I'll show that later. And now I can actually take all the stuff with me, most of it nowadays in the cloud, and then we can make end-to-end demos. This is a slide I made. I could speak 30 minutes about it because I spent a lot of time in building it. But the goal is that, as a government official, I would enter an alert on the That is the, for you, the left-hand side, sorry. And then reach the population with that alert, with the chatbot information on all the phones. And in the middle are all, well, the building blocks that we use to deliver those systems. So we have an actual public warning system, also a cell broadcast center connected to it, and the chatbot. All of that is running currently in Amazon Cloud. Well, this is all made out of components through the time. So interestingly, the public warning system is actually in a one-to-many account of Amazon, whereas the cell broadcast system is on an Everbridge account of Amazon, and the public warning chatbot is on a dedicated account that we made for the Engage project. So this is all different zones, and yeah, you can glue them together. This is what we did. This is actually looks like a real-life system that way, because in real life, often the public warning system is not installed at the same premise as the cell broadcast system. And also the cell broadcast system is separated from the 4G network by firewalls and VPNs and what you have. We used some standards. So CAP has been mentioned. CAP is the Common Alerting Protocol from OASIS, endorsed by the ITU. And CAP contains the actual alert message. And we use that as that's output from the public warning system, input into the chatbot. So the chatbot works on standardized protocols, and also the 4G network and the CBC, they use the standardization first provided by ETSI, now by 3GPP, to send the cell broadcast message out. So this is not proprietary equipment, but we're using as much as possible standardized and public interfaces. So now I will try to enter a live alert using my laptop, and I log into the public warning system and see if I can reach the phones with cell broadcast. And then through the cell broadcast message, you can click on a link and then reach the chatbot and can ask questions. So I walk to the other side, and I would like the engineering to switch to my laptop, if possible. Security first, so I have to log in. Then this is an account used by sales for demonstrations in all kinds of countries. And for Engage, I made my own account. So we have access to our own functions. So in this case, for Engage, I only have access to cell broadcast and the chatbot. And yeah, I'm not going to make a message from scratch because I am a little bit nervous and I make many typos and nothing will work. Can you imagine the real people doing this when they are under stress? So I press a forward button and I get a message that I made earlier. So yes, you can prepare for emergencies if you have templates or saved messages, and I'll use that here as well. So in the public warning system, I have to show where the location of the alert is. So this is Transforma Ever in Brussels. And I made a polygon which describes our location. Then you have to write the message. You could template this out or write it by hand. In this case, we include a URL to the chatbot because that must be part of the message. Some of these fields are coming from the CAP protocol, like category, event, or what is it? We have severity, urgency. You can hide them if you don't use them in your system. But if you want to use CAP and you want these fields properly populated and you want to have that own choice, then you have to fill them in. I do have to fill in one thing, how long I want this emergency to last. And if the demo works immediately, then we're done in 10 minutes or less, much less. So I print in 10 minutes. This is the 4G network that will, if I press the button, the public warning system will send it to the cell broadcast system, and that one will connect to this 4G system, which has a cell in Transforma, which is geolocated in Transforma. And only because I put in the right location, it will then find it. If I would have put in Brussels Midi, for example, this thing would remain, silent, unfortunately, but that's how it works. You have to geo-target it correctly. And I think I'm ready to go. I go down. So here is a bit of information on the output. So I'm going to send it to Cell Broadcast into my chatbot. So I'll go out and send. Not yet. I have approval first, but I gave myself super rights, so I can approve it. That is nice, but this is not really happening in a real world, because normally you want somebody to double check what you did, because people can make mistakes, and it's better if two people look at a message. So, Raquel, are you ready? I hope it works. I've only tested it a few times, so you never know. Oh, I am saved. So, messages has been received. Some phones were connected to this network. The phone from Johan is actually not connected to any network, but because of a safety feature in Cell Broadcast, you can also reach phones that are not connected. So those are completely connectionless. But users, people who have phones here on the commercial providers won't get it, because right now it's privately sent only by the channels of this system. And I did not hack into the Belgium networks. That would be fun. So that was the demo. Hey, there is a latecomer. Well, actually, Cell Broadcast is asynchronous, so it could be that actually a couple of seconds or even minutes later it arrives. So it's not a one-to-one protocol, it's a broadcast protocol. And I think I'm going to switch back to the slides. Yeah? Yes? Yes, that's a problem with the GUI. So if you click it, it disappears, and then you have to find it back from your message history. So if you want to go to chatbot, you have to click the URL or open it, and then it should open a new, a browser window on your phone. And I'm asking, can we go back to the slides? So now we traversed the whole network successfully this time. Well, there's a lot of these things are like production systems. Some things are a bit real and fishy, like the connection of the 4G network to the cloud is done via my telephone. And my telephone doesn't have the bandwidth to support tens or thousands of chatbots. It can send easily a cell broadcast message because that is tiny, but loading a chatbot would not work that well. So we have our limitation in this demo system. Now I'm switching topic. What could be the future? So this project is nearing its ends, and we're looking, what could be next, or what could we do else, or what do we need to do else, or are we done? If we think about functionality, we added a lot of functionality, but there is still things that we did not add, and there are so many ideas. Some of them came from the Norway survey. So what if you could know where your nearest shelter was, or safe area, or police station? Well, perhaps you could ask the chatbot, and perhaps the chatbot could have a directory of all of these known locations, and then use the user's location as well as the alert area to point you to the right, the nearest locations. We would also need to add language support. I think that is, one of the biggest advantages a chatbot could have, because the public warning messages do have their limitations in the number of languages they can support. And well, what you see commonly is 2 languages, but there are, of course, many more spoken in the country. So if we could have 10 or 15 languages support, that would be, I think, great. Yeah, I think it has been mentioned today also, the uses of AI. It's potentially delicate in government applications. Perhaps the public would not be too happy as well. Johan already mentioned this. So what would happen if we removed now all the AI functions out of the chatbot to accommodate those users who are interested in functionality but don't want to use the AI technology? Well, that could be possible. We foresee this, that maybe this would be needed in the future. And then you end up with an application or a landing page that still can give you emergency alerts with graphical location information. So the alert area and the user location. I don't need AI for that. You could also have still the multiple language support, but then you must take care, is your language solution using AI or not? I think many today are, so that is a concern. We could still have, multimedia in there, if the agency can support multimedia. And we can also have, for example, detailed emergency information, like who to call under which type of emergency that you're in, right? So if you're life-threatening, you have to call 112. If the tree has fallen in front of your road, in the Netherlands, we need to call the regional fire station. If the tree has fallen in a public area, but not on the road, we need to call the municipal. I don't have the numbers of that. So perhaps the chatbot could be programmed with the static information to guide the users through this and not use AI in any of these systems. So I could perceive this as a possibility. Then, nothing to do about functional, but going to the cloud and operating under a high load. Today, the chatbot in the Engage project was built bits and pieces. We added an initial version, then we added another AI system, then we added a database, then we added a backend, and that grows and it works, but it is not optimized for performance. So if you want to make this real, you have to do a few more things. We need to make sure that this system would perform under heavy load, not just for the 4 phones that I have here, but also for 40 or 4,000 or 40,000 phones. And that means the performance from the perspective of the end user. So it must be responsive. I don't want to wait 10 seconds or 60 seconds for an answer. I want to have good answers, and it should be robust. We have to test this and validate this. That is not easy to do because you don't get so much the opportunity to do this in a live test. Multi-vendor support. I think government agencies like to propose which vendors should be using to run this system, Google Cloud or a local system. But that is a bit of a challenge. Of course, it should be cost efficient. And in our case, we used Amazon to host it. We had Dialogflow from Google. We had ChatGPT. So this current system would produce 3 bills for the end user to pay. So probably that would not be preferred. And probably you could get the bill down if you buy it from a single vendor. But if all of this is supported by a single vendor, that's an issue. Well, it's also in the blueprint. When this goes live, you would have to monitor this closely. And if it's spread over 3 different vendors, monitoring becomes so much more difficult. And if you have a problem with one of the vendors, like the responses from, for example, Dialogflow are not fast enough, whose issue is that? Is that Google's problem? Is that the hosting provider's problem? So maybe you would then want to have a single solution, but then you need to switch AI vendors. because Amazon does have its own AI system, Google has its own AI system, Azure has its own AI system. So those are, yeah, considerations which do not always make it very easy if you go into a more, yeah, state of readiness. Now, thinking totally the opposite way, but instead of going to the cloud, where things run very far away from the end user, you could also deploy the chatbot as close as possible to the end user. We're in a technology called multi-access edge computing. This is ETSI standardized technology and interfaces. It's very much, well, it's still quite new, perhaps 5 years old. And you could physically run the chatbot near the base stations, near the users. There is a lot of research in Horizon 2020 in the technology streams about the multi-access edge computing. But most of them are all on single use cases, a drone flying around, somebody monitoring cameras. But this is a totally different use case. I have not seen it. I've gone through several of the 5G congresses. I've not seen anybody attempt, a mass application into the multi-access edge computing environment. Whether that is possible, whether they foresee that, we don't know. It could work, it could give much better performance, but it would require, I guess, a fair amount of research whether that environment is suitable or perhaps not. Don't always get lucky. Yes, then, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. We went through quite a lot of technology readiness levels, I think, in Engage, with Nathan and the Tel Aviv University doing all the research, and then Everbridge one-to-many making a prototype, which is actually integrated with real production systems. However, we have not been able to test in Engage a large-scale exercise with a large number of users. So we kind of stopped there, and there is unfortunately no time to do that. So, but that is needed to be sure that this technology also works en masse. Engage is ending unfortunately soon, but the chatbot is not out of our hearts yet in one-to-many Everbridge. We have a hackathon coming up in December, and I put in 3 ideas for experimentation. And also engineers in the company that do not work on the chatbot can work on innovations. We're also working with, looking for possible research opportunities to fill in the missing gaps. And also, together with the sales team, looking for either pilot trials or even commercial deployments. We had one discussion with one government agency who we shown the Engage demo, just like I did to you, and they actually liked it so much that they immediately put it out into an RFP, which they were writing anyway. And then everybody suddenly has to supply a chatbot. Now this is a government RFP, so it could take years before there is an answer or somebody is selected, so it could take years for it to turn around, but there is interest in there. And there is a lot of things that can be done and improved. I think these are duplicate slides, so I'll skip through them because you've seen them already. Were we here? Questions? The chatbot is also available for you if you didn't have one of the 4 test phones, so you can reach the chatbot at the URL crisis.chat or simply use the code.
Actually, don't use the code because the code has expired, but there are the link has not expired, so if you can just type in your browser this link, the survey is there, and we would really appreciate you integrating. It's just 10 questions. So it's really rapid. I will leave this here, so please pick it up and train help us train the artificial intelligence with our collective intelligence. Nathan, I would like to call back Nathan in terms of the implications and prospects for societal resilience.
So, hi again. So after you heard about the framework of the chatbot and you saw the implications, there are a few questions. We chose 3 questions. You, of course, will have some questions that we wish to discuss with you, that we want to see to what extent do you see these things used by either your organizations or other organizations that you are familiar? They are addressing some of the key goals that we've highlighted at the beginning. For example, when we are talking about the information that is spread by those artificial intelligence-enabled chatbots, when we discuss the catalog of solutions, one of the problems we raised is what happens if we open the system to other sources. On the one hand, we make it more updated and dynamic, but on the other hand, we might get unreliable information. So the first question that we also want to hear what you have in mind after seeing the framework and understanding how the prototype is working is what are the safeguards that you would expect that will ensure the reliable information, the accurate information during adversities. I will give you one example just to clarify a little bit the framework of the question. One of the components that we suggested in the blueprint, both in the initial and in the revised version, is human monitoring of what's happening in the chatbot, in the questions that people are asking, in the answers that it provides, in the information and databases it uses, constant human monitoring of what is happening there. And one of the feedback that we got when we sent it to consultation with the technological experts, one of the comments that we received that we don't need so much human monitoring. We can rely on the algorithm. Human monitoring might be needed at the beginning, but then we can use the algorithm in order to safeguard the system. But we decided to leave the human monitoring still in the blueprint. So from the perspective of emergency professionals, not necessarily technological professionals, what are the safeguards that you would expect in order to provide accurate information?
Can I have a question?
Yes.
You mentioned that this chatbot is using a static database. Do you think it is possible for it to use a dynamic one for that exact disaster? For example, you as a DMO feed the information about reception centers, the location, and somebody wants to know, chatting with the chatbot, that which is the nearest reception center to me, or to put it on a map, for example.
So I think the answer for this question has 2 parts. I will give the first one, Mena will complete me. The blueprint is some sort of a roadmap. It's not a chatbot, it's a blueprint. Different prototypes, different chatbots for different scenarios can be developed based on this blueprint. So the blueprint itself does not say whether it's a static database or a dynamic database. It can be static and it can be dynamic. If it's dynamic, it should be monitored. It should be monitored. You can make some sort of a learning gap that the information that is provided is not based on everything you have outside. The chatbot can rely, but in order to give information based on new things, it first needs be inspected, it first need to be examined, it need to be authorized. This is the manual monitoring that we are talking about. And do you want to comment on the technological part for the static or dynamic?
Yes, the prototype has both static and dynamic information, so the alert itself is fully dynamic. But for example, the multimedia that you've seen in the slides, that one is really static information. You put it on the system, and it's there probably for a year, and it can be used whenever it's needed in an emergency. Addresses, for example, of emergency centers, you could statically load as well. And perhaps you need to make sure they are updated. If ever that happens, that could be a potential mistake to forget. But then the chatbot would just use it as is and select the location nearest. So if you have 1,000 of locations, but only 3 are nearest, the chatbot will select the nearest ones to you. So that you don't have to do when there is an emergency. I hope this answered your question.
I have a question. Just maybe more than a question, it's a clarification. So based on the chatbot that you are presenting, so then I understand that the chatbot, you should tailor it to your city. So, I mean, it's not a chatbot that is useful for all the cities, but you have to, let's say, feed with data from your city. So you have to tailor it to your city. No?
Well, we currently envisage it as a public warning is typically done in a nationwide manner, so the chatbot would also be nationwide, but okay, it's not necessarily used nationwide because an emergency is local, right? So you don't have to tailor it per city, unless you say, yeah, but I want to include information about certain important locations per city.
Yeah.
Yes, then you need to load that data. That is not really, I think, tailoring. It's more like loading the correct data for your system into the databases that the chatbot would use.
Okay. And regarding the type of disaster, so for example, maybe the recommendations that you have to give in case of a flood is not the same as the recommendations that you have to give in case of a heat wave or in case of a... So what I want to say is that you need, I mean, is it the chatbot able to identify, imagine that I launch a general question like, how can I prepare? Okay, so the answer, depending on the type of crisis, it should be different.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean...
The chatbot knows the differences between the hazards because the CAP protocol actually has a bunch of fields for that explain how severe, how urgent, what is this type of a hazard. I think there is meteorological, hazmat, there are many categories, and then you can have flood, you can have heat wave, you could have terrorist attack, you can have any categories. Yeah, you could have perhaps in all the categories combined, okay, could have 1,000 combinations.
Okay.
So that is into the chatbot, and the chatbot won't mistake a heat wave for a flood or such a thing, because that is part of the CAP protocol.
Okay, and just to, well, I don't know a lot, okay, but I was exploring with Sahar, you know Sahar from the project, and she told me that there is a new version from ChatGPT that you can tailor it to your company or to your, like, so you feed the data from your area or your company or yeah, municipality, and you can use it at this level very efficiently. So what's the difference between this version of the ChatGPT and this chatbot?
It's a good question because I'm not a ChatGPT expert.
Yeah, no, I mean,
today
but
we partially already do that in the chatbot. So we do not ask an open-ended question to ChatGPT, but actually before we do that, we make an extremely complicated prompt, just like I think we did in an exercise earlier, but I would say 10 times more complicated, with all the information we know about the hazard. So we're already telling ChatGPT, this is going on there, at this location, at this time, with this severity, with these instructions, with these text. And after the end of that huge prompt comes a question. So the ChatGPT will have to take into account that that information, and that makes the information also more relevant. The first version that we had did not have that, by the way. So you could ask funny questions like bake that cake or so, and it would respond. Today, it will not or should not respond on baking a cake, because that is not in the role that we ask ChatGPT to give us answers back. So we want these emergency management information back and nothing else. So he is not supposed to go beyond that scope of imagination or other types of subjects.
Okay.
And I also want to add that when we are talking about the blueprint is dynamic. It doesn't necessarily talk about this prototype or another chatbot. So the blueprint, if you remember in the revised version, there is that green area that you can either create the learning and everything by your own tools, or you can interact with the APIs of technologies such as ChatGPT and the new version that you mentioned. You can take the technological capabilities, incorporate it in your system, and use it and use the language models in order to give the answers and the information and use the databases that you are using. So it's not necessarily a difference, it can be part of the chatbot.
Leire, I also have a response to your question that drives back also to this question. And Mathieu, yes, I'll give you the word just after. So what's the difference between your chatbot and asking the question to ChatGPT? Well, our chatbot, yeah, tailored to your area, okay. But risk aspect of a critical event that manifests in a municipality might have aspects that have happened in other events of that kind, happened in other geographies that might not be captured because you limit it geographically. So that's one aspect. But in terms of safeguard, it brings me back to the issue of trust that emerged so much with the blueprint at the beginning. In our case, the chatbot would come through an official agency. And so the information that are configuring the search that the artificial intelligence is doing are validated by an official authority that has competence in managing emergencies. So that would be one of the safeguards that personally I would expect to have from an automated response to emergency information. And if I don't give the word to Mathieu, he won't admit us in our next project. So,
okay, I have a question first. Nathan, you asked a question about the reliability of information, and I was just checking out the chat box, and I was thinking, if you give negative feedback to the chatbot, can you use that as a way to monitor also the responses? Because I think we've all tried chatbots and we've got sometimes angry at the chatbot, you don't get the answer that you want. Is there also a way to give feedback on the type of answer you get? For example, in ChatGPT, you can also regenerate a new question if you don't like it. Is that an option?
Yes, again, the blueprint is very dynamic, it's very open. You don't need to incorporate all the options, but specifically, you're asking specifically about the public warning chatbot, or in general about the blueprint? Because in general about the possibilities, yes, it's a possibility. The feedback is also received by the users for the answer receipt provide, to what extent it was accurate, asking for a revised answer. This is a possibility, but if it will happen or it will not happen in specific chatbots, this is up to the designers of that specific chatbot.
Okay, and another question I had is that you send an SMS message with a link. And I don't know, but I think we've all been trained by our institutes never to click on links anymore, that you just receive via an SMS message. So I was really wondering how you're going to deal with that.
Well, strictly
situation?
speaking, we did not send a pure SMS message, but we sent in this demo a cell broadcast message. That message can only be sent by public warning systems from government. It's not used much commercially anymore, so there is no access to that. So the pop-up that appears, the noise that the telephone makes, the top-level information is standardized, typically by 3GPP or your government. And there is no other applications at the moment that have access to that. So that can be trusted, yeah. But yeah.
And it's of course something which is adapted to the region you're coming from. What we did here was something very general with people from different areas and differences in how we get those messages. For example, in Israel, we are not using cell-based text. We have other types of warning systems. If I will get such a message in Israel, I will not use it because I'm not used to it. It was just an example. We can use this in any alert systems that is common in the area and will be familiar to the public itself.
So before I have a question, but before I ask the question, there's Denis from the chat who's asking, during the initial phase of the response to an incident, could dehumanization of the communication information channel be an issue? Trust and empathy.
I'm not sure that I understood the question.
I think actually, and I hope I'm not misinterpreting the question from Denis, but my question was in a sense in a similar line, which is, and I like the use case that you're using, which is the to offload the emergency centers. I think it's a very valid use case. At the same time, I think there is more to an emergency center than simply providing information. It's also in a person under stress, being able to contact another person. There are diagnostic functions also of people orienting to, there's also an information sharing function. So there are studies actually of what is a professional operator of emergency center doing. So my question is, Denis mentioned information and empathy, and the trust in the information and the empathy aspect. So that's part of this, this point. So my question is, in terms of safeguards, do you think it's possible to make the blueprint evolve to include those other important functions that the emergency centers fulfill?
So the idea is that if a person decides to call an emergency center or emergency phone line or contact the emergency services, this person should and will be treated by the emergency services. The idea of the chatbot is not to replace, it's not to decide instead of the person that is calling that he or she will receive service from the chatbot. This is not what we are talking about. We are talking about another possibility, that people that initially will decide that their inquiry, whether it's for information or for anything else, could be fulfilled by this sophisticated chatbot. As in cases that we ask Google questions. Sometimes we wake up with a headache, with anything. We don't call our doctor. We open Google and we inquire it. In these same cases, we are talking about the chatbot, but in this case, to be able to provide much more accurate and tailored information. In cases that a person calls the emergency centers or try to contact human being, this is not a question that the blueprint or the chatbot should be dealing with, because we don't want to overrule this decision. We can offer it, we can recommend it, but we cannot overrule a person calling to the emergency services. The chatbot cannot be sympathetic, it cannot show empathy, it cannot understand emotions, and this is why we shouldn't address these questions and we shouldn't make the chatbots address these situations. This is answered your question?
Mm-hmm.
And Denis' question?
I think so. we are right on time, actually, but maybe there's a very last question or comment.
Something? There was 2-3 days ago on INA a webinar on PSAP actually using a chatbot, and they also answered this question which you just had. So how do you make sure? It's the public that had the choice. So the public dials 112. I still think 911 sometimes, but 112, and then they have the choice. So they can ask to a human, where can I donate blood? But they could also, take the option to go into the chatbot menu and then find their answer there. So how do I donate blood? To which location do I go? So it is, it's fully the choice of the end user. It's not for us to say, you should not be calling anymore, and we won't enforce that either. The technology is not, I guess, positioned for that. Maybe some emergency manager thought, oh, I could use that and fire all my, but I don't think they should not be, that would not be wise. So this is just supporting technology and helping to offload a little bit, especially if people en masse are dialing 112 to ask them about insurance questions, which happened a couple of years ago during the storm. And that type of information, when then those lines are busy, and then you can't get through if you have a real emergency.
Two very short questions. Can you define a certain unit of cost for a message being sent as a cell broadcast message?
Oh, that's extremely difficult because it's a one-way technology which has no confirmation. So it is a true broadcast on the airwaves. Your phone receives it. It doesn't say, yes, I received it. So you can't bill the users for it. And that is not, well, we actually had a billing interface 10 years ago in that system, but that's not being used anymore. Surely you could make models and analyze the differences between sending 10,000 SMS in a region or sending Excel broadcast, or you could try to measure load on airwaves or that type of stuff. But normally we don't put a cost on those, on cell broadcast messages.
And one more question. Can you use the system as not just alerting, but a kind of different flashing or sounding for different functions? I mean, awareness campaigns. For example, just information messages, not because of a disaster or any kind, but to let people know before, for example, the heating season or summer season, what are dangers?
It is possible. For example, during COVID, one of our customers did this with the cell broadcast system, but I don't think it would be recommended practice because the cell broadcast is standardized and is kind of intrusive. It makes a noise. And if this is not an emergency message, and if you want to be more friendly to the users, not waking up during the night for something that is not an emergency, I think you should use other technologies for this.
Thanks.
Quick comment. Sorry. Yeah, actually, 2 comments. Just well, if you do send a SMS instead of a broadcast, coming back to the question on trust, we actually have a situation right now in Iceland where they are alerting people entering the area because of the active volcano, as you probably heard of. And they're sending this message from 112. So the recipient of the message actually sees this coming from 112, and nobody else can use that. And even if they reply to that message, that reply actually goes to the 112 center in Iceland. The other thing I want to comment was your last question there. So do you have different levels? And yes, in fact, with the cell broadcast system that we rolled out in Norway this year, there was a specific requirement that you would have a message sent but no sound. But this wasn't for testing purposes. This was actually coming out of the terror incident at this island some years ago, right? You probably heard of as well, where these kids were hiding from an active shooter. And in that case, you needed a way of alerting everyone which didn't make a sound. So that was now actually implemented, and the Google with the Android and Apple has been on board with this, so they participated in now developing that type of alert, which is a silent alert. It's not been used for tests or, let's say, lower threshold alerts, but it's certainly something I would recommend that some of our customers do, because my experience is there's too little testing. They don't really, the authorities don't really test enough, so they don't know what happens when they do. So.
All right, thank you. I think we have to close, but thanks a lot to all of you for this discussion, demonstration, etc.
Mathieu, one correction. This QR code works.
Okay.
It was this QR code that expired, but this QR code leads you to the chatbot survey or to the chatbot itself.
And please return the cell phones, of course, to.
Yes. Yes.